So tonight we're going to get more practical. It's not going to be as theoretical. We'll go through a couple different processes with like the numbers that we use in our business. My goal today is going to be that each of you leave with something you can implement tomorrow for your businesses. All right. For those who haven't joined one of these webinars before or aren't as familiar with me, we'll just do a quick introduction. So I've been selling on Amazon for 4 years now. Currently, we're on pace for about 11 million this year, possibly 12. And we're currently managing over 1,000 active ASINs. The reason I'm teaching this isn't necessarily because I got forecasting right from day one. Some of my biggest business mistakes actually came from inventory planning, which is why I'm just so passionate about it. And I think it's one of the main reasons we've been able to recover and grow as fast as we have. My goal is that by the end of today, we'll go through the system and you guys can implement the same things for forecasting and seasonality products. All right. So where it all began for me happened about 2 years ago. So I ended up missing Q4, essentially. So back in Q3 of 2024, I was managing about 300 ASINs on a spreadsheet. I knew Q4 was coming. My software at the time, which was a spreadsheet with a bunch of macros, was suggesting that I keep repurchasing more and more and more. And at the time, I was thinking, great, I'm going to have a killer Q4. My sales are going to be great. What ended up happening is I didn't extend one of my formulas far enough. I had the range set rather than extended. And essentially, I wasn't considering the items from my prep sheet for almost 3 weeks. So I just kept reordering the same ASINs over and over again. What this ended up doing for me was I ended up being extremely cash constrained going into Q4. I essentially was just barely able to pay off the credit cards. I didn't actually get a surplus to be able to buy new inventory until October. And most of my inventory ended up not arriving until late December. So my sales flatlined in Q4, profit and margins were really low. November was like a couple $1,000s profit, and December ended up being a loss that year, just with how bad the inventory management came about. So as a result, starting in 2025, I made sure that we had a good process moving forward. And since then, we haven't run into any of these issues. So one report changed by Amazon or one formula that doesn't go the correct range can easily cost, 10,000 or more in losses. So kind of going through the process, curious if any of this sounds familiar or if any of you have experienced this. And based off of some conversations that I've had with each of you, I know you guys have. So you open up Seller Central on a Tuesday and realize one of your best ASINs has only like 4 days of stock left. Now you're rushing around and you're trying to get the order in, but you already know that you're going to be missing the sales. Or as one of our most recent testimonials that we've talked about, you actually wait till you're out of inventory. And when you see that you have zero in stock, that has been your sign to reorder. So you're just constantly doing ebbs and flows of adequate stock, high sales, and then running out. Or you could be the opposite. And this was a friend of mine where you order a ton in August because you hate the reordering process. And you still have like 200 units in February and you haven't ordered since then. And you're always cash strapped as a result. So what's actually going on in these scenarios, by the time the problem's already showed up in your dashboard, it's too late. Q4 is coming, but you didn't act early enough because you didn't consider the extended lead times. Or you're trying to rely on the systems from when you had 20 ASINs. But now at 150 ASINs, you just can't keep track anymore, and your memory's just not good enough to cover about it. So tonight we're going to talk about building the habits and the systems that more experienced operators are going to use to stay ahead of this before it shows up as an actual problem. So quick poll for those that are here. How do you currently manage your reorders? So A, you have a system. You have your velocity, lead times, and reorder points are documented for every ASIN. B, you're using spreadsheets and software. It works most of the time, but occasionally the ASINs get missed. C, mostly by feel, you're reordering when you're starting to look low. Or D, as I know some of you are, you're literally waiting till you stock out in order to reorder. If you just drop it in the chat real quick, we'll take a look and get a gauge on where everyone's at today. Okay. All right. You guys must not have inventory problems then. So. Haha. Thanks, Nick. You're using Replan Pulse now, so it's not an issue. That's what I love to hear it again. Oh, I'm not even sharing my screen. Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. Is that more helpful now? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. My apologies. Thank you guys for letting me know. I need to ask next time if I'm sharing the screen or not. All right. Well, thanks, Nick, for saying Replay Pulse has solved all your problems. So A was like, I have a system. B, the spreadsheet or software. C is mostly by feel, and D is reactive. So thank you all for letting me know. B, good for you. Nice job, Lucas. All right. So by the end of the session, you'll have a forecasting framework. So this is where you'll be able to see your velocity, lead time buffer, and reorder timing. Within the timing, you'll have a better sense of it. You'll know when the inventory actually has to be reordered. We'll discuss seasonality, specifically long seasons, short seasons, Q4, and how we need to accommodate for all three versions. The 3 actions to take this week, so you can start building your system, and kind of like where the forecasting software fits, what it does automate, what it shouldn't, and how you need to incorporate it in your business. All right. So before we get started, if you're managing 20 ASINs today, I don't want you to think this webinar isn't for you. This is exactly when you should be building the system. It's much easier to build it at 20 than to rebuild your business at 200. So growth is going to expose the weak systems. When you're managing 20 ASINs, it feels like you know every product. You notice inventory problems before they occur. You're missing one reorder isn't a big deal because the profit at this point is not as large, and your memory is a system. You're probably checking your ASINs every day, and it's easy to keep track of it. Once you start managing more ASINs, say approximately 150, not every ASIN gets reviewed weekly. It can fall out of memory very quickly. The seasonal demands change before you notice, and you're not able to react in time. Supplier lead times change without warning, and you don't have a process to track this new supplier lead time. The cash gets tied up in the wrong inventory, or purchasing just becomes reactive, kind of like we spoke about earlier. So the best way to grow is going to be to not rely on your memory, but to build a better system. All right. So before we jump into like the seasonality and forecasting, we got to review for regular forecasting. So the 5 questions to answer for every ASIN is going to be, how many days of stock do I actually have? When will I stock out from this ASIN? If I ordered today, when will it be sellable? Do I need to add extra buffer on the lead time side? And what is my safety stock? This is going to vary greatly based off of the business. Safety stock comes really important when you start going brand direct or private label, because you could have a significant impact in customs. So every mistake that will occur with the repurchasing process is going to occur from getting one of these wrong. A wrong stock out date is going to be missed sales, wrong lead time, also stock out. If you don't account for the Q4 delays, you're going to land after Q4 and miss the sales. And then I'm really big on cash flow and efficiency. So if you have too much buffer, you're going to be cash trapped. If you have too little buffer, you're going to be having constant emergencies. All right. So how do I go about answering these 5 questions? And this is when we're going to start getting into the numbers. So for sales velocity, I only consider our 30-day rolling average. We get a lot of requests to talk about 3-day, 7-day, 14-day, and 60-day averages to put weighting to this. In my opinion, this creates a lot of noise and fast reactions. By ordering just weekly on a 30-day average, you can go ahead and account for trends that kick up. Inventory availability, we're making sure that we're accounting for the on-hand, inbound inventory, FC transfer, and the quantity already ordered to our prep center. Total lead time, it's going to be supplier, prep center, Amazon, and all 3 of these get extended around Q4, which we'll review in a little bit. Lead time buffer, as I was just mentioning, you need to have extra days for unreliable suppliers or Q4, and then the safety stock for seasonality, and ensuring that you're stocked for the short season. All right, so going through days of stock, and this might be a little bit basic for those of you who have a little bit more experience, but this is going to be the first number that I calculate, and this is what all of our restocking software is going to be based off of. So days of stock is going to equal total available inventory divided by daily sales. So if you have 240 units total, divided by 8 units per day, you have 30 days. So 30 days sounds really good. So is 30 days enough for this ASIN? No, 30 days is not enough. We need to make sure that we're accounting for lead times. Our target desired days of inventory is going to be 35. And since we only have 30 days of inventory, I know we're going to end up eating low inventory fees and missing out on sales. So every purchasing decision is going to start with this number. And if it's wrong, then all of our restock recommendations are going to be missed. How much should I reorder? So once I know my days of stock, the math becomes simple. How I kind of think about it is we need to decide my target days, which is going to be my desired days of inventory. In this case, 35 plus the lead time. Lead time is going to be supplier, prep center, and Amazon. So I can then calculate how many units that equals and then subtract what I already have. So very easily, quantity to buy equals target inventory minus current inventory. Using the example on the right here, velocities of 12 units per day of units being sold, current inventory at 600, and a lead time of 28. So target inventory in this case would be 35 plus 28 to give me 63 times 12, 756 units, which means even though I have 600 in stock, if I want to stay adequately in stock, I need to purchase 156 today. If we waited until we were down to like 100 units, which still seems like a lot, we're way too late to stay in stock.
I have a question now.
Yeah.
If you could go back to that slide, the next slide might actually answer the question. So decide my target days. You have 35 plus lead time. So on Replan Pulse, the desired days of inventory, like my default is 45 for like faster moving ASINs, and then 20 for the slower ones. Is that where that number is coming from?
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So the desired days of inventory for us, for at least my business, we keep it at 35, just because we've always been cash strapped. So desired days of inventory is how many days of inventory you actually want at Amazon, and then we also allow for like the lead time to be like the separate, right? So using like Replan Pulse as the example, DDOI would be 45 in your case. And then you would have the lead time allocated to the prep center, the Amazon time, and supplier. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So all right. So it's calculating the DDOI of 45 plus, like, we'll say my prep time is 3. Amazon time is 14.
Yep.
So it's adding them all up together. Is that where?
Yeah. So it's going to be like the DDOI would be like 45 plus 3 plus 14 plus however long it takes to get from your supplier. So at this point, we're already at like 52 days of inventory is really what we're targeting in this calculation then.
All right. And it's going to depend on my suppliers too, because it's a lot of local brands. So it's I got to pick them up at certain times when they have them and all this other stuff. So kind of a game that's trying to figure out when I can get the inventory too. So
yeah, and that's why it's really important to make sure you know like the lead time per ASIN, right? So like if one of your suppliers supplies 10 of your ASINs and they're going to say, hey, we can get that for you, but I need 14 days notice, then that's where making sure you have this reorder quantity really identified so you don't run behind is why it's so important. Within our business, I have 2 suppliers that range between 75 and 120 days lead time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of planning to make sure that we're staying stocked adequately.
Yeah. So like with mine, I don't want to ask too many questions, particularly with my business, but I do. It's a question that it might pertain to someone else. Since we mostly do wholesale, we have to basically order a certain amount. So I have a lot of inventory in our warehouse at a certain time. So it's like it's like I don't understand how to figure that out. How much I actually need to send to Amazon based on like I've got probably like 2 or 3 months worth of inventory in the warehouse currently, but I'm not going to send all that to Amazon. So I guess I need to try and figure out my numbers as to how I should be figuring this out, like per ASIN. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It sounds like what you're talking about is like local inventory and being able to identify what needs purchased versus what needs sent in. speaking specifically to Replan Pulse, since that's the software you use, the restock recommendations are going to essentially be, this is how much we recommend you to purchase / send in to Amazon, whether you have it already or you need to purchase it. That's how much we would suggest you to send in. So in those situations, if you do have like 3 months worth, you could just really easily adjust your lead time to say 0 for that ASIN, and that would tell you how much should be sent in like that day.
Okay, the order lead time is set to 0.
Yep.
So over there it doesn't. Okay. All right. I'll do that. Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, and I wasn't going to actually go into any deeper on that one, so it's a good thing you asked. But for those of you who might have similar issue to me, what happens when I can't order everything? How do I decide what gets ordered first? We never have unlimited cash, and this has always been my crux since starting this business. So what I want to do is take a bunch of filters and try to narrow these decisions down. So one, I want to identify what's going to stock out first, which ASINs are going to make me the most money. That way I can have more cash to purchase in the future. I want to protect my proven winners, that I'm going to call it, right? The consistent ones. And then what can I safely wait on? The ASINs that I know aren't going to trigger the low inventory fees, kind of like you were talking about with your 20 days of desired inventory. So here's a quick screenshot of Replan Pulse with the filters that I use. So in this situation, I'm doing historical days of supply less than 21. So in theory, I'm already hitting my low inventory fees. This is way too late, but catching it now is better than never. My ROI is now greater than 40%. We normally target 30%, but I want to make sure I'm maximizing the capital that I have available. Desired days of inventory I have is greater than 35. So with how our business model is set up, slow moving ASINs are 20, fast moving ASINs are 35. And I define that based on which ones are going to get hit with the low inventory fees. So I'm only going for my fast moving ASINs. And then I automatically sort down from recommended quantity to buy from highest to lowest, right? Fastest way to spend money while I have it. And these are the ASINs that need it most. Say I get through all of this and I have additional capital still left over. We can, of course, open up these filters, or say I'm really, really tight and I want to raise my ROI to, say, 60%. At that point, everything on my screen here would have been over 100% ROI, which is awesome. And then I can always keep backtracking and reordering more as cash becomes available. So if you're in a position like me, this is definitely the filters that I would use. And that we do use specifically when we start talking about Q4 later on. All right, now that I have a poll actually being displayed by the webinar, what's your biggest challenge with seasonal inventory? Do you guys use the same reorder formula all year? B, are you guys using manual seasonal adjustments? Are you using spreadsheets and calendar reminders? Or do you have a fully dedicated forecasting software that kind of solves all of your seasonality needs? Nice job, Nick. Nick. You put B, manual seasonal adjustments. Definitely works. I just wing it, and Tamina, that is good for you. I've been there a long time. And Ed, that's nice. We'll definitely give some specific examples here later on for what we use for our business. We used to use the same reorder formula all year, and we definitely adjusted it a lot. Kind of over the past year. All right. So seasonal products require a different strategy. Stable products follow trends. They're easy, very scalable. The seasonal products do not. So why are they harder? Obviously, January sales aren't going to predict the June demand. Ordering from today's velocity means that you're going to stock out as you get near the peak season. When you're in the peak season, the velocity means you're going to overstock later if you're still ordering the same amount as the season's dying down. And when it comes to seasonal products, the timing matters just as much, if not more, than the quantity. So for the sake of this presentation, we'll go through and talk about seasonal products in two different aspects. One's going to be the long seasonal ramp. Like an example would be pool chemicals. So the demand builds gradually with a weekly reordering frequency. You're able to keep up with the demand with some type of preparation. You have time to adjust, and if you make a mistake, it's recoverable. The short seasonal window, Thanksgiving plates, or July 4th plates, for this weekend. You really only get one opportunity. If you miss the reorder date, you're going to miss the season, and there's no catching up, and it can be very costly. So I use a completely different forecasting strategy for these two, and hopefully it would benefit you guys, especially those of you just winging it. Okay, so pool chemicals. This is what we actually do like on a monthly basis. We don't actually sell pool chemicals, to clarify, but we do sell seasonal products that last for 3 to 4 months. So in January, as the example, we would place a small order and we're starting to plan for February. February, we're increasing the multiplier before the demand changes. We'll go into specific examples with like the numbers we use on the next slide. But I want to talk about like conceptually. So we're slowly increasing it, and we need to be planning for the next month. When March comes around, we need to increase again because the demand's climbing as we start getting near the peak season. And then say like by April and June, we're now getting to like the peak ordering. We're buying for where the demand will be, not where it is today, because we know like June through August is going to be like the prime time for the pool chemicals. Coming on the backside, and this is where I think a lot of people get trapped with seasonal products. We need to start reducing our multiplier and reducing our spend so we don't get stuck with a lot of products that eat up storage fees and capital. So we need to make sure we're reducing the multiplier and that we stop building the inventory and we start selling through. And that's the fun part because we're recouping the gains that we've built all summer. So in order to succeed in the summer, you would have to prepare in the spring. So if we were using pool chemicals as the example, this is what it would look like for us. First thing I'm going to say, and for those of you who know me really well, I love task managers and I love reminder systems. So here would be a great example to use like something like Asana or ClickUp for this aspect. Something that can send you a reminder. So for pool chemicals in February, what I would do is I would increase my seasonality multiplier to 2.0. Seasonality multiplier, we'll talk a little bit more when we jump into like talking about replay and pulse, but the seasonality multiplier essentially tells you how much to order based off of what your lead time is expected to be. So in this example, we're going to use 28 days because that would be our standard lead time, which makes it really easy because we're essentially just saying, where do we expect to be in 1 month? If your lead time was 60 days, then you need to make sure your seasonality multiplier is set up for 2 months from today. So looking at February, we're going to increase the seasonality multiplier to 2.0. In theory, I'm going to sell twice as much pool chemicals in March as I am in February. When March rolls around, I'm going to increase it to 2.5. So by increasing to 2.5, this is going to be comparison to the sales that are occurring in March, preparing for April. All right. So it's not from February, but it's going to be looking forward 1 month. So I would expect to sell 2.5 times as much pool chemicals in April as I would in March. And then April and June rolls around. I'm kind of getting up in that peak season. Pools are being open. The chemical supply is going to be kind of at like a peak. I'm going to drop my seasonality multiplier to 1, knowing that my sales April through June are going to be pretty consistent. July and August, again, this is where we're going to want to decrease the seasonality multiplier even lower because we're kind of starting to go into the off season. And I would rather sell through my inventory early than be stuck with a lot later on and end up selling at break even or a loss or paying significant storage fees going into Q4. So September and October drop further to 0.6. I'm going into the winter where people aren't really opening up their pools or maintaining as frequently. But then when I get to the winter, I am adjusting my seasonality multiplier back to 1.0 under the assumption that my sales are going to be steady for that winter season. So what would this look like? I would have the ASIN number with like what I'm planning on doing. So increase seasonality multiplier to 2.5 on March 1st. I would set this up to be an annual reminder. And for me and my business, I know I do it every Monday. So in this situation, I would set up the reminder to be the first Monday of March for this ASIN. That way you don't have to remember, do this on your own. And when you go to place your orders, you just have a quick list to make sure you're considering all the seasonality products. All right. I know that was a lot. I don't know how many of you guys are using the seasonality products, but this is actually where some of our highest margin items are. We sell a lot of like spring items. So it's always a good quarter for us. All right. Now for the tricky ones. So conversely to the long form seasonality, we have the short. You have one chance to get it right. So unlike pool chemicals, you can't really plan based off of previous month's sales. There's really no time to recover. So using Thanksgiving plates as the example, we're going to have to order 12 weeks before Thanksgiving. And I think that's going to be very shocking to a lot of people. But we want to make sure that we are confident that our inventory is going to be there on time. So 12 weeks before Thanksgiving, I'm going to place the purchase order. 11 weeks before Thanksgiving, supplier ships it, right? Supplier has a 7-day lead time. Prep center, specifically in Q4, it's definitely not unheard of to have 1 week processing. Summer right now is our busy time. We're at about 7 to 10 days on our prep center processing at this point. In Q4, we have Amazon receiving. I like to predict 4 to 6 weeks. So if we assume that Amazon does 4 to 6 weeks at this point, then my inventory is getting there somewhere between October 15th and November 1st. So in order to be prepared for Thanksgiving, I'm needing to order 12 weeks in advance. In a specific situation like this, it's better to be safe, right? I would much rather pay an extra month of storage fees if Amazon happens to be really, really fast, because the cost of being late is tremendous. So the short-term storage fees like this, we have the buying side. I think the selling side of it is just as important, if not more important. So 7 days out, you can monitor the velocity. You're going to want to adjust the repricer and plan for a 7-day sellout. So using really simple numbers, if I'm selling 50 units a day, I want to be 350 units or less of inventory. If I'm not, I'm decreasing my minimums, where I'm increasing the aggression of the repricer. 3 days out, I'm doing the same way. So say I have 300 units, I'm selling 100 a day. I'm content. If I have 500 units, I'm selling 100 a day. I'm not going to try to maximize profit. I'm going to go ahead and increase the aggression to make sure that I'm selling through and not being stuck afterwards. 1 day out, I don't risk it. I lower to break even. So I'm going to be one of those price tankers. But the cost of being stuck with inventory afterwards on a seasonal product like this is too costly. So after Thanksgiving, give it a week or two and liquidate. Something that my team has found, and this is to the best of my knowledge, whenever you're doing our removal orders, if you click dispose, you pay a pick and pack fee for the removal order. If you click liquidate, and Amazon allows you to liquidate it, to my knowledge, you don't pay pick and pack fees for the removal, and you get a little bit of cash back. A very, very small, but you're avoiding the removal order fees. If any of you found this otherwise, let me know. But that's a quick way that we get around for liquidating or disposing our cheap products that we don't even want to ship back to us. So as I was mentioning earlier, the storage fees don't matter if you're going to miss the season. It's better to get your inventory in early for these specific products. All right, and then last poll for the evening. So let me hear from you for which one of these might apply to you. What's your biggest Q4 bottleneck? Is it your supplier and prep center delays, for those of you who don't have your own warehouse? Is it knowing how much to order, having enough cash available, or avoiding the leftover inventory after the season? See here, Nick, knowing how much to order, yeah, that can be challenging. Especially your niche is a little interesting around the Q4 season, if I recall. Let's see here, what about everybody else?
Yeah, we sell mostly food.
Yeah, so Thanksgiving's the big season for you guys.
It is, yeah. November, the biggest month usually.
Perfect. To me, and I see you say B as well. I'm not as familiar with your business, but I can show you the numbers that we use for ours that tend to work for us in most times. All right. So Q4 makes every step slower, right? So our sales are speeding up while our supply chains slow down. So for me, or I guess those also in the wholesale, we're going to probably feel this a little bit more, but the suppliers slow down. The manufacturers are filled up. They're trying to supply the other retailers that are out there. If you're doing OA, you're competing with a lot of other consumers. So the production queues grow longer and freight takes a lot longer. Those without their own warehouse, your prep centers are backed up. When we were doing it previously at another prep center, they were backed up 14 days, one of the Q4s. And come October and November, that's extremely impactful. So you have more sellers shipping in inventory, longer processing queues. And if you haven't already had those discussions or it's a new prep center, you're going to want to make sure you have that discussion about what the holiday capacity is and how they've handled previous years, whether it's overtime, additional staffing, etc. Amazon takes a lot longer in Q4, as we all know. So we have the check-in delays are increased. The transfers are really what takes longer, and that's where the unpredictability is. So we see the receiving delayed from like 2 weeks, which is what I would experience right now, up to 4 and even 6 weeks. So you'll see how those numbers are accounted for in our business here in a couple slides. So what does this mean? Normal lead time, as we were talking about earlier with like the DDOI plus lead time, goes from 4 weeks up to maybe 7 to 9 weeks. So for our business, like an order placed after November 1st may arrive after the sales season's already over. If I'm sending something in November 1st, I don't have very high hopes for it to be available for FBA for Christmas. So how do we go about changing our buying strategy to accommodate it so we can have a successful Q4? Going into August and September, I'm cutting my low ROI ASINs to free up the cash. I've mentioned many times that I'm constantly cash constrained, and this is one of the ways that I've found helps for our business. I'm going to buy deeper on the Q4 winners. So for those of you who use replens, we can look back at last year, and you might already know these offhand if with memory, but we try to make sure that we're adequately stocked on those as a priority, because if it was successful last year, it's a better chance for it to be successful this year than testing on newer ASINs. We treat September 15th as the ordering deadline for Christmas. So I know that seems really, really early, but if we are expecting 7 to 9 weeks, that puts us back to the December 1st timeframe, assuming no more delays. And then something else that we've done for Q4 to try to help with, I'm going to call it like cash flow a little bit and with fees, is we've looked at doing LTL previously. So if it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get in there, we're not getting hit with those extensive Q4 storage fees. The inventory is arriving just in time for Christmas, and we're not maybe leading to any price tanking. So I know within our group, there's quite a few people who do toys. This is a great strategy to get them in there, especially because they can be bulkier and really high volume for the Q4 season. During Q4, October through November, with our lead time, we're increasing our expected lead time from Amazon from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, right? So we're going to have a surplus of purchasing, trying to get as much inventory in as possible, knowing that some might be delayed. We increase our seasonality multiplier from 1 to 1.2 across all of our ASINs. Since I know the majority of you guys use Replen Pulse, I'll literally just go from 1 to 1.2, click apply all, and that'll update all 2,000 ASINs right now in our catalog. For those of you who have the capacity, this is where we'd want to shift the inventory to FBM if possible. It's a great opportunity to improve the cash flow. You no longer are relying on Amazon's like lead time delays, and it allows for you to react before price tanking, especially within the OA space. And then kind of like a philosophy that we have in this time frame is that we're going to prioritize the in-stock rate over like maximizing ROI. We've been burned so many times in the past where say something's constantly selling for $100, I'm going to try to stretch it at 105, 110, and then 10 other sellers jump on it, goes down to 90, and I'm stuck selling it at 90 or waiting 3 to 4 months for it to recover. So prioritize the in-stock rate, the sales velocity, rather than trying to hit max ROI, because it's better to sell 10 items at 40% ROI than 5 at 50. And then just like everything else we've talked about, we need to make sure that we're exiting Q4 efficiently. So December 1st, I automatically decrease my seasonality multiplier from the 1.2 that we were at previously to 0.8. So there's going to be a couple weeks where we aren't hitting our purchasing goals, and that's okay. It's the smart and responsible thing to do to make sure that we're protecting our cash flow. So we've stopped building inventory. We're starting to reprice to sell through. We're not trying to panic sell. So if we see that we're on a listing and it goes from 50 sellers to 20 sellers in the matter of a week, I'm probably not even going to reprice. I might be going for a little bit higher ROI then. But if we're on a listing, we aren't really selling many units and it's specific to Q4, we're going to go ahead and lower our price and make sure we sell through it so we don't get stuck with it for a few months afterwards. We want to make sure that we're entering Q1 lean and not overstocked. Q1 is a great time to rebuild and plan for the coming year. And if you're stressed about having enough money for taxes or credit cards, it's a very uncomfortable place to be in. All right. After Q4, so when January 1st comes, I drop my buffer back down to 14 days. At this point, if I'm ordering from a supplier and at my prep center, I'm already 2 weeks out anyway. So by then, we're already in mid-December. Amazon's catching up through their receiving process. I would expect them to be able to receive inventory purchased on January 1st by January 31st. It's a great time to do a thorough evaluation of all ASINs, identify which need to be repriced and which should be held. In my specific niche, we have a lot of price tankers and there's a lot of like Q4 promotions that go on. So January and February tend to be some of our most profitable months because all of the inventory is purchased, sold, price tanked. Our inventory gets in there late December, mid-January, and we're one of the only people that still maintain stock because we utilize LTL in those situations. Speaking of like the task manager and calendar from earlier, this is a great time to record our seasonal product sales and reminders for next year so we can be better prepared. And then February 1st, I'll finally go through and adjust my seasonality multiplier back to 1.0 for all of our FBA listings, now knowing that we're starting to look at a normal velocity. So I think I have to talk about cash flow on every single slide, right? So the operators who are going to struggle with cash flow in Q1 are usually the ones who held too much inventory in Q4. And the tax man doesn't like being delayed. So here's the system that we're using for all of our like seasonality and forecasting. Seasonal calendar, I'm using a Google Sheet. I think it's probably one of the cleanest ways right now, based off of available softwares out there, to have all of my ASINs and all of my trigger points. So this way I can track what's changes and when. I know my peak season dates, order by deadlines, and then I'm going to review it quarterly. All right, so I think Google Sheets is probably the preferred method right now for this. Recurring reminders, you can use Asana, which is fantastic. It's a free software if you're not already using it. And then my team uses ClickUp because it has a little bit more capabilities behind it. But it allows me to not have to rely on memory. So I can set up the reminders that are going to activate on my Mondays when I do my weekly purchasing review. It automatically ties into your calendar. And it's a fantastic way for tracking those seasonal orders to be able to say, hey, order it on this day or increase your seasonality multiplier, March 1st. For one source of truth for all of your inventory, we of course use Replen Pulse. It goes ahead and has like the live Amazon inventory. It tracks our supplier lead time across multiple ASINs. For a lot of our ASINs, we have 4 or more suppliers. So it's really important to make sure that we know how long each of those suppliers are for every ASIN. And it tracks current velocity as well as accounts for velocity changes for us automatically without us having to be as involved as some alternatives. And then the end of season plan, because I think exiting is just as important as the preparation for the season, is making sure that we have the exit strategy. So Asana and ClickUp are going to be the best ways to remember all of your modifiers for seasonality multiplier. So that would help with like reducing the orders, making sure you're repricing intentionally, specifically for those short seasonality products, making sure you liquidate the leftovers if necessary, as opposed to disposing and then freeing up the cash for the next season. All right. So where does Replen Pulse fit into all of this? So it allows you to see like the entire catalog, instantly knowing which ASINs need attention today, sorting recommended quantity to buy from high to low. You can spot velocity changes very quickly because all the calculations are done for you on the background. And the seasonal demand shows up before I stock out. Even if you don't adjust your seasonality multiplier because it accommodates for changes in velocity, it'll automatically increase or decrease for you somewhat proactively. As I was mentioning, since I have ASINs with 4 or more suppliers, it stores the supplier lead times for each of those. And it makes it much easier as you're trying to do like your restock numbers. So for example, if I'm tight on cash flow and an ASIN has a lead time of like 75 days, another supplier might have it for 10 cents more and have a 20-day lead time. So it makes it easy to be able to switch between the two and know that your restock numbers are adjusted. And then finally, it has the adjust seasonality. So that way you can update proactively to be able to plan for where the future sales are. Previously, we were looking at multiple inventory reports, both from Amazon, other softwares, calendar reminders, etc. All of this is now in Replan Pulse. We do still use a Google Sheet and ClickUp to maintain for now until Replan Pulse incorporates it. And then for those of you who might not have tried Replan Pulse yet, this is what it would look like, where you can have your seasonality multiplier for each ASIN and then simply sort by the recommended quantity to buy. All right. So we're going to put 3 action steps for this week. Identify the seasonality for all of your ASINs, whether long season, short season, or Q4. Determine the order by date. So you're going to want to work backwards, kind of like we did with Thanksgiving, knowing that we have to order 12 weeks prior in order to be ready for the specific season. And then just try creating like one recurring reminder, either with Asana or ClickUp. That way you can be better prepared for the next season for that ASIN. Resources from tonight. We'll go ahead and post this webinar if there's a specific slide that you want to go back to and check out. So we'll have like the seasonal prep checklist, the season exit checklist, and then for those that want to try Replan Pulse, if you're not already a member, I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat to give you an extended 30-day trial. And then we can also answer any questions either in this webinar or the next one.